Welcome everyone. Uh, this is the ICC's practice preparing a proposal budget workshop. I think the title before was about submitting a proposal, but I know that there's some overlap with orientation, and so this is actually more focused on preparing a budget. This is primarily for those who want to know more about the intricacies of proposing budgets. So when you start submitting a proposal, the budget is probably where you're going to get yelled at the most. And so that's kind of what we're doing here, is to kind of help speed that up, speed up the yelling too. And then also we'll have some practice as well. So that way we'll also have practice filling out proposal budget accordingly, and then going through that, just kind of easing some of the things. And then you'll see why, but sometimes if you make certain assumptions when you make a proposal, and that assumption's wrong, then you get in trouble, or your proposal just simply you can't submit because you're not within requirements. And so this is here to help with that. I know that there's also and we'll go more in that. So my name's Vin. I'm an assistant professor in the mechanical and aerospace engineering department. That's one hat. My other hat is I'm the center director for Michigan Tech Center for AI under the Institute of Computing and Cyber Systems here. After this workshop, we're going to have I don't know why it's called a workshop, but another presentation on AI-enabled proposal support, kind of what we've been doing in that area, the lessons we've learned, and going from there. So this is kind of a two-part thing. One reason is because it's better for us to just speak for 2 hours rather than having chop it up, so on and so forth. All right. So the outline here is the motivation behind kind of the charge and how we aim to help. The deadlines. Does someone have something to say? Sorry. Oh, okay. And then prior to preparing the budget preparation process, practice, and then conclusions here. So some motivations behind why, I guess maybe we're behind this. So a bit about me. My postdoc was at a national agency. It was not an FFRDC. So I didn't have experience writing proposals since our money came from Congress. So I didn't submit to DOE or stuff like that. So when I first started here as faculty, my proposal submitting experience was through Learn by Fire. For reference, my first proposal was 7 pages and the page limit was 15 pages. That's not being efficient. I didn't know what I was doing. Don't do that. This is an email that I have here of just saying I don't know how to fill this in. I don't know if we have an indirect cost agreement. We do. And then so on and so forth. So, I think part of this is also me kind of showing my experiences, so on. Also, the sponsored programs office. So that's the official office at Michigan Tech. Once again, I think this was covered in orientation as well. So they're the official office that submits proposals and manages research contracts. It's not like a paper where, you can be a corresponding author. These contracts are with the Michigan Tech sponsored programs office. So they're kind of the main authority, and we're just kind of the technical nerds as it is. There's a lot of resources that are provided by sponsored programs office, and I feel like it may be too many. So there's things going into proposal preparation. There's how to develop a proposal here, so on and so forth. The deadlines. So there's a nice little deadline calculator here. There's the RD toolkit that's given by the VPR's office. So it actually provides templates, so on and so forth. This is all going to be shared, by the way, these slides, so don't worry about that. And then we also have forms provided. So all the different forms, so on and so forth there. And then I found out recently that even ICC also has a budget worksheet, which is a step-by-step guide on how to do that. So there's a lot of forms. And it's so much that sometimes it can get a little confusing. And so, what part of this is kind of informal workshop provided by one of the institutes here at Michigan Tech, ICC, on budget preparation. So there's probably, back when I was doing orientation, there was a more formal training that occurs throughout the semester where they talk about research integrity and things like that. You can think of this as getting a head start. I didn't want to wait. When I first rushed in, I didn't want to wait till I went through all the training to start submitting proposals, right? I wanted to do it right out the gate, a couple months in, if not a month in. So this is kind of a way for people to kind of get a head start and start formulating their proposals. So we have deadlines. So let's say you want to submit an RFP that has a deadline. So here's the deadline calculator here. That's for reference. So the official policy is 10 business days before the deadline. You need to have a full budget draft and the subrecipient paperwork. So subrecipients is an organization that receives funds from Michigan Tech. So let's say Michigan Tech teams with Boeing and University of Tennessee, Knoxville to submit to Department of Energy with Michigan Tech as the lead. Michigan Tech would receive funds from Department of Energy, and that flows through to Boeing and University of Tennessee, Knoxville. So basically that sub has to give their proposal to you. 2 weeks before. Then do 5 business days prior to the deadline. We have internal and non-sized documents. So that's basically everything minus the technical sciencey stuff, right? And then also Cayuse is completely routed. We'll go more into that. And then do 1 business day prior to deadline is the actual technical sciencey stuff there. So you can kind of see the layers in submitting a proposal. So one thing to note is that, starting early, I'm just going to check the chat to make sure it's not logistical. Yes, we can provide the slides after the workshop. So one thing to note is that, starting early is good. Starting 4 weeks earlier is tight. Even though you can see here the budget and non-sciencey stuff and the sciencey stuff are kind of decoupled, oftentimes in a good proposal, they're interlinked, right? How you form your teams and subrecipients helps inform how you do the technical work, right? So unfortunately, sometimes I have to think of it as the entire thing is due 10 business days before the deadline. Here you can see as an example, if you're trying to create a team, that changes how your proposal is written. If you're using some equipment, you have to write them into the proposal as well. And then, yes, if you have subrecipients, they have to submit all their docs to you 2 weeks before the main deadline is due. And they might have an internal deadline for their own, right? So here at Michigan Tech, 5 business days, we need our budget submitted to SPO. If I partner with Rochester Institute of Technology, they might need their budget information 1 week before the 2 weeks, right? So then that kind of compounds there. One time, this is an anecdotal story, I submitted with 4 subrecipients, and there has an RFP that was released 5 weeks before its deadline. That was awful. But the reason is that sponsor intentionally did that to filter out half-baked proposals. So they intentionally tightened up the thing to kind of filter out people who just like, I want to submit an idea there. So sometimes you do have to, sometimes that'll happen, and you just have to roll with it. All right, so I know that this was kind of discussed a little before, but if you're interested in submitting a proposal, you'll have to submit a notice of intent form. The way that I tend to look for this is often the first thing I do because that bugs everything in SPO. MTU notice of intent to submit proposal. Like so. And then route and submit. And then I have to now look here. This is kind of what I was referring to about how everything is over here. Yeah, so a notice of intent to submit a proposal form, like so. So this is a Google form. I like to include the response. So I'm going to go ahead and just fill one out. So let's say the sponsor is the National Science Foundation. The main point of contact is me. The Michigan Tech is the lead. So we're not submitting to a prime, but we are the prime in this case. The official sponsor deadline, I'll say September 26th. The lead organization. So once again, that goes into, right, if the deadline is a certain time, but we're a sub to someone, right, they might have their stuff due 2 weeks before, right? So that's what this goes into. The expected submission date. So, if there's an unsolicited program, total estimated budget. So this kind of helps people determine like, oh God, is this really important proposal or not? Additional comments. This is kind of how you can convey, I fill this out a lot to provide lots of context about what's going on. The solicitation. So this is the link to the program. And then co-investigators. You don't really have to fill this out as much. but it is helpful so that way everyone's kind of in the loop. And then, is this the PI's first proposal to the sponsor? You say no. Will any of the sponsored funds be used for payments for individuals outside of Michigan Tech? This is subrecipients, so on and so forth. So if you have subs, vendors, you can select yes or no. Is there foundation or industry involvement? So this would loop in folks like Jake Manchester over there for support. Any human subjects? So if you're doing things like participant support for educational-based programs, or you're doing like human subject studies, so on and so forth. Animal subjects, so that's pretty explanatory. Biological agents as well, and then you can see here. Is there a limit? So some proposals are limited submission. So they only allow a certain number of submissions submitted by Michigan Tech, in this case. That way it's not like 5 PIs submitting from Michigan Tech. It's maybe only 2. So some agencies will limit that. Are you planning on proposing to submit this proposal through a research institute? We'll go more into what research institutes are. But here are the variety of research institutes that you can select. This is once again sponsored by ICC. And then are you planning on using a shared facility? And then you click all of that, and then you click submit. So what that does is it helps and notifies SBO time to hit the races, right? Time to get started. After you fill out a form, you're going to receive an email like this saying that your form's received, and then someone will reach out to you. You will then receive a separate email stating an SPO analyst has been assigned to your proposal. So this is the person who is the formal administrative contact who helps prepare your proposal. So you can kind of think of that person as the gatekeeper, making sure like this is okay, this is not okay. You've missed this deadline, we won't submit, things like that. And then they officially prepare the proposal for submission by SPO leadership. You're in charge of keeping track of what forms. SPO can confirm dates and deadlines, but you should ask. And then also, Cayuse is our proposal tracking system here. So this is Michigan Tech Cayuse. There's actually a good tutorial on how to operate Cayuse, where you can reference this here. But this is kind of like our proposal saving system. So here I'll go ahead. I can go to projects, sponsored projects. This is in the reference documentation, so I'm not going to go too much into it. And then I don't know what proposals do I have under development. Oh, I have a Cayuse tutorial in development. Nice. Okay, so you can form a new proposal, and this is where it logs in things like your proposal title, the project end date, start date. It also has the personnel information, the budget here, research materials. Does this require chemical, biological materials, controlled substances, so on and so forth. So we don't store all our stuff in a Google Drive. It's in like a nice official Cayuse system. That's what Cayuse is for here. And then we also have routing. So after you have your proposal done, logged through Cayuse, that then has to be approved by your chair, then by your dean, by the associated members, IC faculty, so on and so forth, accordingly. So you can think of this as like the official proposal logging system. I don't know how it did that. Okay. And then, yes, so your SBO analyst should also receive the Cayuse number. So there's a Cayuse number that you kind of saw. It's the control number for proposals. So that way they can access it and, check things over, right? So you can think of Cayuse as our official system. This reference document is actually quite nice. I was very happy with how that is. So we won't go too much in depth on filling Cayuse. The other issue with Cayuse is when I create a proposal, I can't delete it. Yes. No. So that is I was about to just talk about that. Yes. So if I go to Cayuse here, and I wanted to change this thing from Cayuse tutorial, it's grayed out. And I also can't delete this proposal as well. Huh? Yes, SPO can do that as well. They can do that. But Yeah. So I guess one way to think of it is that there's like the project title, which here is Caillou's tutorial. But there's also this proposal title, which could be because like the project title could be something like, Vin's first submission to NSF. And that's like everyone kind of knows what that is. And then the proposal title would be the boring technical stuff for that. No, no. There.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Why?
Titles. The titles are different. But this here is the proposal number. So this is kind of, I don't know if I'm highlighting. This is the control number that SPO could look up, and they know that that's linked to your proposal in Caillou's here. But in terms of the project, this is kind of the project title, right? Here, Caillou's tutorial. And then I have a proposal under that project. And then this proposal title can be automated data preparation. Sometimes it does, but if your proposal title changes, then you can change it here. And then your project title, your project title could be something that's like super broad of something like NSF Career Submission 2025. And then as your proposal title is changing, if I instead of automated data preparation, I'm saying automated data preparations, I could just change it in the proposal title. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, or revised proposals, resubmitted proposals under that project. Yep. Yep. Great questions. I'm also I've noticed a few in the chat, so I'm just gonna see. Oh, okay. All right, so James is handling that. All right. All right, so that's everything prior to the hard part. Now is going into preparing the budget. So as I mentioned before, sometimes the budget can be decoupled from your technical proposal. Often the case for fundamental research, there's data policy, so I don't go into specific PIs. But some PIs are budgeting, just for like PhD student, maybe some supplies, some travel, that's it. Then yeah, you don't really need to, your budget doesn't need to really interweave well with your technical proposal. This tends to be the exception rather than norm, right? If you're creating a project, your budget and your resources do tie in well into how you draft that story, that technical story there. So that's also pretty critical. So here at Michigan Tech, our budget is prepared as an Excel spreadsheet, not a Google Drive sheet. Do not open this in Sheets. I've done that a few times. It goes really bad. So it's an Excel spreadsheet. And SPO provides the templates here. And then we have different templates for a budget spreadsheet. So we have the budget preparation spreadsheet. And this is actually where a lot of our practice is going to go in. We have the 1 year preparation budget spreadsheet. And then we have a large proposal budget spreadsheet. So if you Google Michigan Tech proposal budget, you'll be able to find it. And I can do that here. MTU proposal budget spreadsheet. I can go in developing, and then you can see it here. So that's much more Googleable there. So here's an example of the standard budget spreadsheet. So you kind of fill in your numbers here. So let's say if I wanted to budget, $1,000 for faculty, here I wanted to budget in, $10,000 for a PhD student for this year, and then I wanted to go over here. I want to budget in another 15,000, and then here, so on and so forth. So here you can see on this spreadsheet, I'll fill in this information, and that becomes my budget that I then send to SPO. And that's the reference on knowing how much resources I'm going to request from the sponsor here. So this is where a lot of the meat goes in. We also have this 1 year. So if you have a 1 year or less project, smaller project, you don't have to go through as much stuff. And then we have a large budget worksheet as well. You can see this worksheet has like 8 tabs, huge size. Yes.
These budget spreadsheets, they've been plain stuff.
Yes, yes. So that's a great question. And we'll bring that up because some of my numbers are already outdated in my example calculations. But yes, these budgets also have all the updated information with regards to indirect rates and fringe rates here. And then you have the large budget worksheet. I personally, now that I've gotten used to doing this, I tend to do the large budget worksheet and then just shrink it down just so that way I'm not going through so many different types, but whatever works for folks there. And then, yeah, preempting that question, you should always download a new template each proposal since templates are always being updated. So rather than like storing your template on a drive and just like copying it for every new proposal, it's better just Google Michigan Tech budget spreadsheet and get the most updated one every time you submit a proposal. But don't worry, if your budget spreadsheet is outdated, SPO will definitely let you know here. And then, as I said, I generally use a large proposal budget worksheet since it counts for all cases, which might change as your proposal is being drafted. All right, so now what we're going to do is I'm going to go through and basically explain almost every single line of this thing. And I'm trying not to drive myself crazy while I do it here, but so the first line of the budget spreadsheet is summer salary. So that's summer that would be paid for 9-month faculty. As many of you all know, you're not paid for 3 months in the summer. You can think of budgeting summer salary as a bonus for getting an awarded grant, right? The equation here is if you have 9 months of summer salary, that's 38 weeks times the number of weeks budgeted. So if you wanted to budget for 3 weeks and your salary 9-month is 90K, then your budget is 90,000 divided by 38 times 3, which equals this much. So that's how much you would budget and put in that. You wanted to budget for 3 weeks. Your academic time, so that's the next part. So this is the academic time that's already paid for by teaching, right? You all have a certain salary for 9 months. Your academic time generally is budgeted for things like course buyouts and cost share. So course buyouts are, oh, I'm doing this really big research project. I need time during the academic year. I can't teach a course while doing this project. You know, I'd like to buy out a course, right? That's something you also have to talk with your department supervisor about as well, your unit supervisor. So course buyouts are pretty expensive. They're basically all or nothing. You can't buy out half a course, right? So one course, depending on your department, is roughly 15% of your salary, depending on the department. And that's so oftentimes this academic time is used for cost share, which we'll get into later. So here's an example. If you budget for one course buyout, 50% depends on the department. Then you just put 13,500 if that's your salary is 90K into that spot. Yes.
For summer, why would you only put 3 weeks?
Because it fits the budget. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Yep. And this is what I typically do, and I don't recommend this, is like I'll use my summer salary to kind of fill it up to the limit, right? So if like if the sponsor says the cap is like 400K and someone is, and I with PhD and everything, I get 350K, I'll go, I'll budget summer salary for the rest of the project, just my own time. This is a personal thing. I didn't really do this to be rich. So I generally don't get much summer salary when I do that way. Yes.
If you have a multi,
Yeah.
and let's say your budget,
Mhm.
do you typically try to account for some cost of living raise?
Yes. This guy has read my slides or something, but we do have a yearly escalation. Yes, that we'll discuss there. But great. I'm glad people are asking these questions because these are definitely where we're getting into. And then we also have graduate students. So these are budgeting for full-time graduate students with a stipend. That would be, I'm just going to go ahead and go here. So we are now at this part here. So I've budgeted for, oh, So I've budgeted for faculty, and now I'm going to budget for a PhD GRA. So what I can do is I can click on this link. I think I have to go to this link. Okay, well, normally I'm able to click on the link. Yeah. It's interesting. Let's just test that theory. Yeah, you're right. So they do have a link here to the stipend rates. So here's an example on the stipend rates. So if you're budgeting for a PhD student that would start in fall 2025, that's how much you budget for the 1 year range. 1 year being fall, spring, and summer there. So that's the range. I'll tell you, typically people do the minimum just to make budgets work, but you know, there's a range. Yes. I don't know what happens. I could try it and see what happens. Oh, the budget apparently that's a no-go with SPO. So yeah. So if you budgeted for a master's student in this, oh, yeah. 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 Yeah.
And the reason is because they're qualified as a exempt employee, right? And the Department of Labor says if you're going to be exempt employee, you know, need salary and wage.
And you can also look this up, or AI can just do it. You can see here. Yeah, yeah. That's, I mean, there's no cap at least, but that's something you can look up online for those rates there. So as an example, if you budget for a master's student starting in fall 2026, you would run budget for 27,000 roughly to 37,000 for 1 year, like so. So once again, they give a range. People don't really go outside that range. And then there's also hourly graduate and undergraduate students. So this is budgeting for part-time. So as an example, 10 hours a week at 17 weeks for $20 an hour, right? Fringe doesn't apply to them. We'll go more into that. You can think of hourly students as a lower commitment than stipend students. So you can think of them as cheaper and just less commitment labor, right? Because, you know, the minimum for a graduate student is $27,000. If you need to make budget works, that's a possible option. But as you all know, there's the academic side. We have to graduate PhD students, right? So obviously that's more favored. And then others, there are miscellaneous full-time folks. That includes postdocs, research engineers, program managers, etc. So here is other, and then here is hourly and graduate students and undergraduate students as well. Yes. Yes.
Can I talk? Can I
Yeah.
ask? Yeah, I want to just add a comment.
Mhm.
Yeah, for those who are in the engineering, you know, the
I guess
College
we're
of
all on the same page with
Engineering.
that.
Can I say?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. It's College of Engineering now doesn't allow that hourly graduate students, so you probably have to prioritize the putting the only that full student support instead of the hourly. So yeah, there will be more
So-
budget, but that's the almost a must to do, I think, from now on.
So to kind of elaborate on that more, they don't allow it for PhD students, right? You can't put a PhD student on hourly, right? College of Engineering, not during the summer, not during fall or spring. For master's thesis as well. So if you have a master's thesis student, you're not allowed to put them on hourly. You are allowed to pay for hourly for coursework master students, right? So students who are doing coursework as an example. So that's where you can kind of see some of that part-time commute there.
Good
Did I say
idea.
that right?
Thanks.
Okay. all right. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Without getting, because that gets a little weird, but as an example, you can also budget, like, let's say I have two projects. I could split one graduate student 50% stipend tuition on one project, 50% stipend tuition on that other project. Another example, if I have two projects, I could split that graduate student 75% stipend tuition on that one project, 25% stipend tuition on that other project, right? If I'm going for stipend and tuition as well. There. Not particularly, not a formal range. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, but there is like a state of Michigan minimum range. And sometimes if your proposal is awarded, they will ask for that cost documentation of where did you come up with 20, as an example, $20 an hour.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, is 20 the reason why there's like that, but no, for like MS per student or? Made up?
For me, it's conventional, but it depends on how budgets work. So I know some folks have budgeted like 19, some people budget 22. Yep. But you definitely do want to go at least above the minimum wage.
So a research assistant probably commands a hourly rate somewhere in that range at least. Presumably they have other motivations than just the dollars and being involved in there. So there's some, in my experience, there's some room for negotiation. You might be able to pay them less because they're motivated to have the experience. But I would suggest just asking your colleagues who have funded hourly graduate or undergraduate students as a main relevant in that case in terms of what's competitive. Especially if you're having trouble recruiting someone, you might consider what you're offering. Sorry for jumping in then.
Yeah, no worries. But yes, that's true. There's not really a formal value, but you kind of have to ask around. And then going into the yearly escalation. So you do have to budget 1% to 5% raise each year for faculty salary. So student stipend escalation is always 5%. The online resources, so this little chart kind of already accounts for that. So if you see this number and this number, that already accounts for the 5%. So if you just follow the chart, you'll be fine for stipend. And then hourly students, so both undergraduate and graduate are not subject to the raise. So as an example, if you budget 3 weeks for your summer salary, 3 weeks for year one, 3 weeks for year two with a 3% raise. So this is my summer salary for the first year, standard formula. And then I multiply that by 3%, add that on, and then this is my year two salary, accounting for that. And here's how I would fill it out in the spreadsheet, like so, for the yearly escalation. Yeah, so that's important because I've also not accounted for that. And then I thought I hit the max. And then I was like, then they said, no, you have to account for that. And then when I accounted for that, I went over the limit, right? There. All right, yes.
Is the spreadsheet doing that?
I have to do it, yeah. Huh? We'll get into that, actually.
That in that range of 1%, 3%, so you as an escalate, which is not a fixed.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah. But then the spreadsheet automatically calculates things like fringe here. So fringe is budgeting for non-wage compensation. This is like insurance, retirement, payroll taxes, that type of stuff. So fringes are showed as the percentage here, like so. So you can see percentage next to the personnel description. So as an example, if you budget for summer salary, you apply a 19.4% fringe there. So if you budget 4 weeks, I decided to do 4, I don't know, just mix it up with numbers, and your salary is 100K, then your fringe, once again, this is the part I requested, times 19.4%. This is the fringe amount that I would have to add onto that, right? So then in case my total budget for that person would be that part I put in the spreadsheet plus this fringe, which is this. So you don't have to worry about that because this is automatically calculated in the spreadsheet here. So I'll go ahead and do that for you to show that. So let's say I go here, I'm going to delete this, and I budgeted like $10,000 in summer salary, like so. I go down here, the spreadsheet already calculated that fringe amount there, and it already added it to my total. So I don't have to worry about calculating that out there. The spreadsheet does that for you.
Like once you get, let's say your phone gets approved, or you're given that $1,000.
Mhm.
Where is that? Like, is it part of the overhead?
No, so that's its own separate direct, like direct cost line. So as an example, let's say that my, we'll get more into that, but this is here the total direct cost. So that's that 10,000 plus the fringe there, and then overhead applies on top of that. Yeah. All right. Great. Yes.
Another reason why the spreadsheet isn't already pre-programmed. And when you're submitting and when your start date is, you might be escalating your salary for the first year. I don't remember what the exact cutoff is, but Michigan Tech fiscal year and when your salary increases are effective is July 1st. Situation. So depending on when you're submitting again and when your start date is, if it's far enough in the future, you might have to escalate that first year. And so it's really a case by case basis. Put all this to your program made, but it's made a little bit more flexible. Not perfect.
So this was actually something we talked about with AI-enabled proposal support, is can we use AI to actually automatically create budget spreadsheets? And part of that goes into my backgrounds in manufacturing. When you try to automate a process or incorporate a robot, you don't just take what the person's doing and then just like shove a robot in there. You have to change the workflow to make it robot accessible, right? So if we were to use something like AI for that, probably wouldn't use a spreadsheet as an example. Anyways, so the next part is equipment. So in general, big ticket items over $10,000, I think that's updated and that's correct. Okay, no one said anything. All right, that contribute to research infrastructure after the project ends. There's another term for that. I like to think of equipment being its own category. It's like really big supplies, right? So you could budget for supplies, maybe some tools, some drills, things like that. Equipment is like big, hefty equipment. There's more paperwork involved. So equipment quotes must be reviewed by SBO to ensure what counts as equipment. If I got a quote for equipment, but it comes with like a $25 like adapter plug, like that $25 adapter plug doesn't count as the equipment, right? That's in the quote there. This is a bit informal stuff. Agencies rarely say we won't fund equipment, but it's a touchy subject. I see sometimes folks do this. So as an example, let's say NASA funded a project, for 3 years, and they helped buy a 250K computer, right? You put that in the budget, you got the grant, awesome, right? After that project ends, you, other people, and other agencies like NSF would still benefit from that computer that NASA paid for, right? So that's why it's kind of a touchy subject sometimes when it comes to equipment, because that investment benefits you more than the sponsor that paid for it, right? So on and so forth. So I know that some agencies like Department of Energy, they ask you sometimes to return that equipment after the project's done. I know that happened with one professor for computing supplies, at least. I won't say always, better often than not, it's better to budget for equipment with equipment-related RFPs. That's NSF MRI, DoD DURUP, rather than write it to the grant. So in your startup negotiations, if someone asks you and you ask for a piece of equipment and that unit supervisor was like, oh, you could write into the grant, I'm here to tell you that the chances of that happening would be very low if you don't submit to these equipment specific RFPs. Because sometimes people, right, they start out, they're like, I really need this, you know, force sensor or something like that, try to put in the grant. No one's saying no, but yeah. Then domestic travel. So that's budgeting for travel. In the spreadsheet, it's nice. You don't have to break down travel. You just have to put in the lump sum. A lot of times what I do, I probably shouldn't say this with SBO here, but I come up with the lump sum and then I back justify it to make it work. So I get a lot of really weird airfare fees to make it go exactly to $2,500. So here you can do things like registration fees, travel costs, lodging and food, which is called per diem. That's found online by GSA. So I can go here and I can see if I want to go to Alabama, Huntsville, and I find the rates. And I can see how much I can budget for meals here, and then also for hotels as well. But once again, in the budget spreadsheet, your travel is just going to be one number. I'm just going to put like 2,500. And then, like I said, what I do is I typically just come up with other budgetary justification that makes it magically match up to 2,500 there. International travel, similar to domestic travel. Obviously, it's more sensitive depending on where you're traveling and so on and so forth. Participant support costs. These are costs for human subject studies, internships, summer participants. Consultants. So these are people that work for you, but they don't count as subrecipients. So you can think of these subrecipients are like co-PIs. You would include them on your publications, right? You know, if you work with another professor. While consultants just kind of do a service that doesn't really require research. It's just something that they're kind of already doing. Consultants, contractors. They have forms to determine consultants. When you select on your intent to submit proposal and you say you have a subrecipient, you'll receive forms saying like you need to fill out this form to show that it's a contractor versus a subrecipient here. So this is questions to see, is this person going to be a subrecipient? You know, will they perform investigator level work? If they're a contractor, you know, do they provide goods and services that they normally do, right? If someone's like, you know, going to maintain a car for automated vehicles research, and that's just what they do, that's not really a subrecipient, right? That's more a contractor there. Supplies. So these are general materials that you need for your research. Once again, these are the minor things that don't really count as equipment. I know sometimes they'll sum up to a decent amount. Services provided by Michigan Tech and folks. So this includes rental fees for vehicles, catering services, use fees for material characterization equipment, so on and so forth. Publication and documentation. This is for purchasing documents like ISO standards, open access publication fees, etc. And then subawards with IDC. So this will go more into, now we're down here for subawards with IDC. Oh, I'm in the wrong area.
I can see the equipment. All stand current. Return.
Yep. So this refers to the amount of funds that indirect costs will apply to the subrecipient's IDC for the first 50K of the subaward per year. We'll discuss IDC later there. So this is subawards without IDC. So as an example, if your subrecipient requests 125K, so your sub is, I don't know, University of Connecticut, they want to budget for 125K for year one, then your year one budget is as follows. The first 50K, IDC applies to that. After that, it's subawards without IDC, like so. And so you would fill this in like so into your budget spreadsheet. And then the budget spreadsheet will then apply those IDCs to that amount. Note that even though in the spreadsheet you just fill out lump sum, each subrecipient also needs to provide their own budget and budget justification in the sponsor format to SPO. Yes? The subrecipient is another organization outside of Michigan Tech. Yep. Question. Then there's tuition and fees. So after that, we still got to go into tuition. Indirect cost rates don't apply to tuition. That's automatically calculated. The tuition rates can be found online. They're also linked in the spreadsheet as well. Yes, this one has it. So I can go on here, try to click. Okay, bit of a lag there. So here I can see the tuition rates here. It depends on the department, right? Different departments have different for tuition. So if I go to, I don't know, computer science and cybersecurity, I can see the GRA tuition rates here. So as an example, if this is for mechanical engineering, engineering and mechanics, if I budget for one PhD student for 1 year, fall, spring, and summer, I have $14,729 for the fall, then the same amount for the spring, and then for the summer, I have 4,743, and that's how much you budget for tuition for that 1 year. And then there's also this little thing here called candidacy mode as well. So after a PhD student passes their PhD proposal and becomes a candidate, this is after they pass their proposal, not their qualifying exam, their tuition drastically decreases. So you can see it's like a $10,000 decrease. And this is like a $3,000 decrease, right? So you could kind of think of this, I don't know if this is the intent, but it's an incentive to push your students to propose because their tuition becomes much cheaper to budget and pay for. So as an example, if I budget for a PhD candidate, so this student has already proposed for 1 year, I go by this amount, 4,698, fall, spring, summer, and now I see 10,962. So that's about $24,000 less. And then we now go into facilities and administrative costs here. So that's what this applicable F&A rate is here. Oh. So these are called indirects, general administrative overhead, though some sponsors differentiate overhead from like overhead for people and overhead for like supplies. It's really annoying. But these are expenses that support a project that can't be directly tied to any specific activity or deliverable. So as an example, SPO services, they have to get paid somehow, right? HR for onboarding students, they have to get paid somehow. Electricity for your lab, that has to get paid somehow. IT infrastructure for your computing, right? I like to think of it as like a tax that kind of applies to your direct costs. Here are the different rates. This is once again outdated with the new rates. The new rates came in. But what you would do is that you would look and see what percentage based on the type of research that you'll do, and you'll enter in the amount here. So as an example, on the spreadsheet, let's say if I'm doing on-campus organized research, that's 48.6%, 48.6, 48.6, and the spreadsheet automatically applies those indirect costs. So in terms of which one do you typically select, most people just select campus organized research. I do recommend that you talk with SPO to confirm that when you're still getting used to it. But that's what almost a lot of people do. So you can see some of the other ones are for DoD contracts, MIDI only, MTRI only. Some, if it's like purely some educational grant that's not on campus for whatever reason, that's like a different rate. But like I said, a lot of those tend to be very different situations. Yes.
Given the current attitude for these kinds of
Mhm.
do you happen to know SPO is ready to move for a direct charging system for things that would normally be included in ITC?
I get paid way too low to know that. But that is something that we've also had to talk with SPO. Because obviously when I'm budgeting, I want to know like that, right? And that type of situation just kind of changes in flux depending on how negotiations go. But it's always good to check with your analyst. Yes. No, it does not. But we do get a cut of that overhead, which we're going to go into later. So it doesn't affect it. No, it's no cost to you. Yeah. The only reason you wouldn't not select a center is like if you just like hate all of them for some reason. So Once again, directs and indirects should be less than the sponsor cap. So if these are your direct costs, this is your indirect rate, old value, then $56,000 as applied. So this is the total cost if I budgeted for 100,000 in directs. If your sponsor has a cap of 100K, then this is over budget, right? So the cap includes directs plus indirects, right? Don't assume that it's only directs. I'm put that there because I did that once. You know, it includes indirects plus directs. So we'll go into IRADs. This link is still being updated. So basically what IRAD is if you get in a proposal, some organizations at MTU will get a share of that indirect there as you spend the money. Below is an example. This updates every year, so this is old. So your department gets 9%. So if I did the 56.5%, your department gets 9% of that kind of discretionary funds, right? Maybe you have your department coordinator, your chair had to spend time yelling at you for filling this out wrong and signing CAIUs, right? There's money for that. Your college as well. The institutes, so varies, but depending on the institute, I think ICC is 21. That's probably updated or outdated. The PI, that's you. You also get 10% of that overhead as well. So that's kind of discretionary funds that you can then spend. And then the rest of the indirects go to the university. So let's say if you had a proposal funded, your indirects were 250K. Here's the amount that your department, college, institute, PI, and university would get as you're spending this money, right? So these indirects only accrue with this IRAD only accrues when you spend the money. So if I budgeted for 100K and I, for some reason, only spent like 50K, then you only get that indirect from that 50K. Like, so you should encourage to spend the entire 100K throughout the project because the money's there anyways. But you can also think of this as a way for your department, college, and institute to help you, right? You know, I'm not always like altruistic, right? You know, ICC, we get indirects for faculty who are successful, right? And so that's why we want to help you here, right? Because that's how our business model works. So when you get proposals funded, we get a cut of this indirect, and that's how we operate. So, and then there's the grant total. After that, that's how much you're requesting. Once again, that must be less than the sponsor cap. Now we go into cost share. How many minutes? 6 minutes. Okay. So cost share is project contributions provided by Michigan Tech. A lot of sponsors require cost share. You can think of it as calling skin in the game. Other times sponsors add cost share to just filter out people who just kind of want to submit something, right? They put cost share in there so that way you consider what you're doing. The MTU policy I've experienced is Michigan Tech can only cost share what's required. So, you know, cost sharing more money to make a proposal spicier, generally not allowed. Cost sharing beyond the minimum. So if your cost share is like 100K, you know, Michigan Tech, your subrecipients maybe can cost share more. But Michigan Tech wouldn't cost share to be beyond like 150K if the minimum's 100K, right? There. And part of that is also to make sure that your time is allocated properly, right? And the way that they can present this in RFPs can be confusing. So, you know, cost share should be X%, be 1-to-1, so on and so forth. Applicable items for cost share include faculty and staff time, graduate assistant tuition. This is known as GACS. So you have to fill out this form and you can cost share a portion of that tuition. Other direct costs like supplies, travel, and equipment. Subrecipients can also contribute to cost share as well. And then you can't cost share existing equipment. So I've done this before. I'm like, I bought this robot in my startup and I bought it already and I want to use it towards the robot. That does not count as cost share because I already bought the thing. What counts as cost share is I'm going to purchase a robot with my own money in the future, and that's going towards the project. Or this microscope in my lab has a use fee, and I'm going to pay the use fee myself rather than budget for the use fee in the project, as an example. So fringe and indirects related to cost share are also applied to cost share as well. So faculty time tends to be the easiest to commit. This is because like 40 to 45% of 9-month time is already allocated for research, right? You have some time automatically allocated to research. All you're just saying is that some of that time is going to be specifically devoted to the project that you're already spending, right? I probably shouldn't say this. It's kind of like money laundering, but legal. So therefore, let's say your salary is 110K. you commit 4 weeks of your time during the 9 months to the project, right? Then that's your cost share right there. So once again, the cost share is just, you're saying that time that I would spend for research, doing my own thing, I'm going to devote specifically to this project, right? So that's kind of how you can think of that. Oftentimes, that's the most efficient way for cost sharing here. All right, so we were going to do practice, but people kept asking actually very good questions, so I'm very happy. But this is something that you can all practice on your own time. So in conclusion, the sponsor requires even more documents, less picky than the budget. So your budget justification, data management plan, synergistic activities, collaborators, facility document, CV, mentoring plan, and much more stuff. So once again, that's what the institutes are here for, right? So the institutes and centers that you select on your notice of intent, they help with preparing all of those forms before official review by SPO, right? As mentioned in IRAD section, these institutes get money if you get money. So they are incentivized to help you. So when selecting your institutes, we recommend that you explore around to get the right fit, right? So on. There's no, home base for institutes. When I submitted to institutes and centers, I submit to a variety of different ones, depending on the needs, the benefits of the institutes. Maybe there's use fees for equipment, so on and so forth. So we recommend that you explore around to find the right fit. That ends this workshop. It took a bit longer than I was hoping, but that's good. I'm glad we're asking a lot of questions. And we'll have these slides available for folks. We'll have them reviewed for correctness, though obviously the policy and rates change every year. As you can see, we're here to help. We also have this barcode for folks who are looking to provide information on feedback on additional workshops that the ICC can do here.